In order to make the moldings that I needed, I set up a half round bit in my router table. Once my bit was set up, I made adjustments to the fence and tightened it down. I also put a feather board near the fence. What a feather board does is keep the piece of wood tight against the fence while I'm running it through the router profile. You should always use a push stick when working in close proximity to a spinning router bit. Once I made my test piece, I made some minor adjustments, and then I ran my stock through the router table. I ran the same profile on both sides of the piece of wood, then later ripped it on my table saw to make the final molding. It's much easier to do this than to run small pieces through the router table. I then switched to a half round bit to make the next profile. I ran this profile through the router table and then flipped the piece to run the second side. By running it through the router table twice, I've created what's called a bullnose profile. Now that I've created my molding profiles, I take my measurements, write them down, and take all my moldings over to the chop saw station. By cutting them on a 45-degree angle, I create what's called a mitered corner. These pieces will trim out the front of the vanity and give it a real nice detail. When cutting pieces so close to the chop saw blade, I prefer to use a scrap piece of wood to hold the small piece up against the fence. By doing this, I keep my fingers out of harm's way. A great day in the shop is one where you walk away with all your digits. Now that all my pieces are cut, I'm ready to apply them to the front of the cabinet. I like to test the pieces out to make sure everything fits before I put any glue on them. It just makes the operation a lot less messy. I use my 23 gauge brad pinner when applying the moldings. I apply a little bit of glue to the moldings as I'm installing them. Remember, less is more when applying glue. Too much glue might ooze out and ruin the finish later on. I use my brad pinner to pin the moldings in place until the glue dries up. I finished the right side of the vanity with the same molding detail. I finish off the other side by pinning the moldings in with my brad pinner. As you can see, a little bit of applied molding makes a huge difference in the look of your furniture. It's those small details that truly make a difference. Now I'm using the bullnose molding that I made earlier to trim the bottom of the cabinet. I use a mating piece of molding with a 45-degree angle cut in it to help me align the side molding. I then mark it and run it over to the chop saw to cut it up at the mark. As you can see, I slowly but surely work my way around the piece of furniture until I'm done trimming it out. A little tip is to bring your piece of furniture over near your chop saw. That way there's less running back and forth to the saw. Although it takes a little more time, I try to use glue and clamps whenever possible to minimize the number of nails that I put in the face of the furniture. And now it's on to finishing the face frame. I prepared a few blocks, and I use these blocks as spacers to go in between the face frames while I'm securing them with pocket screws. I prepared 2 stretchers with pocket holes, and I put my 10-inch spacer blocks on the lower part of the cabinet. I add a little glue to the ends of the stretchers and place it on top of my spacers. I use pocket screws to secure the stretcher to the cabinet. Then I remove my spacer blocks. I like to take time to sand the project as I'm moving along. That way at the end, when I'm ready to stain it, there's way less sanding to do. I hope you've enjoyed the information in this video. Coming up, I'll be finishing up the project by putting drawers in and staining it.